What's up, everyone? Welcome back to The Devil's in the Details. I'm BD, and let's just get the show started. I have had thousands of requests to do something on Deadpool.
No, you haven't.
Hundreds. I've had hundreds of requests.
Nope.
Dozens of people are asking.
Dude, your mom loves Sandra Bullock, and she wants to do a show on the proposal.
With Ryan Reynolds? Okay, moving along. You know, we can blame Canada for a lot of things. Shocking things, embarrassing things, even cringeworthy things. But if we're going to do that, we'll have to look at the good things also. Some Canadians have managed to leave a footprint in mainstream pop culture across the globe. Other Canadian icons have been able to transcend time and cultural barriers. And Ryan Reynolds isn't quite there yet, but he's well on his way. Sure, there have been a few duds here and there, a few misfires, a couple of jobs taken just to get a paycheck, but you can't really blame a guy for trying to make a living. In 2004, Ryan Reynolds had never heard of Deadpool. But while he was shooting a film called Blade Trinity, an executive from another studio approached him and told him that if ever there was a Deadpool movie, he would be the perfect Wade Wilson based on his portrayal of the character that he was playing in the Blade movie. Reynolds had no clue who Deadpool was, so the exec sent Reynolds a bunch of Deadpool comics. Reynolds admits that he wasn't really a big comic book reader, but that he did gravitate to the character and quickly fell in love with him.
The first issue I opened up, I'm not making this up, I was on the panel. Like in the comic, it said, Deadpool was saying, somebody asked him what he looks like. He says, I look like a cross between Ryan Reynolds and a Shar-Pei. And I was like, Jesus, this is fucking destiny. What the hell?
Bringing Deadpool to the big screen definitely did not happen overnight. In fact, it took over 11 years before 20th Century Fox Studios finally gave the filmmakers the green light. And there were a few key factors that led to the studio's approval. The first one was that the script, written by Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, the two writers behind Zombieland, had been leaked online. And Deadpool fans went nuts for it. They loved it so much that they started writing to the studio to make the script into a film. But a few thousand emails wasn't enough to convince Fox to invest into an obscure and little-known character. However, it was enough to convince them to give Reynolds and his crew just enough money to produce some test footage.
Hola! Me llamo Piscina de la Muerta. There's no easy way to say this. I'm pregnant, Trevor.
And so, a few more years went by, and then something else happened. The test footage was leaked online.
I know that one of us did it. Like, there's four of us. There's me, Rhett Reese, Paul Wernick, and Tim Miller, the director. One of us did it.
Okay, good. Yeah, I don't know who did it. Yeah.
We all sort of said at the beginning, someone should leak it. Someone should leak it. So the idea was planned, but I'm 70% sure it wasn't me.
Reynolds had been harassing the studio for the better part of a decade, but it wasn't until Fox witnessed firsthand the fan response to the test footage that they finally caved in.
They were vicious, and they so overwhelmed Fox with feedback and positive feedback about a Deadpool movie that here we are. With relatively short order, they were basically said, go make your movie.
Within 24 hours of the leak, the studio gave the filmmakers a budget of $58 million, which is nothing compared to the $200 million budgets they had been giving to produce the X-Men films. But even though the Deadpool production had such a ridiculously small budget, they did make the best of it.
It's a big house. It's funny that I only ever see two of you. It's almost like the studio couldn't afford another X-Men.
The filmmakers were able to produce a movie that looked like a $200 million film, and that is in large part thanks to Tim Miller, the director. Miller is a special effects artist who co-founded Blur Studio, a visual effects animation and design company. Miller was able to squeeze Deadpool's shoestring budget enough to turn every single dollar into $10. If faith is measured by dollars in Hollywood, it's safe to say that perhaps Fox didn't have the strongest of beliefs that a mostly unknown comic book character, coupled with a limiting R rating, would bring great dividends back to the company. I guess they hadn't seen Guardians of the Galaxy. Little did they know. Deadpool was created by artist-writer Rob Liefeld and writer Fabian Nicieza in 1991. His first appearance was in the New Mutants issue number 98. Initially, Deadpool was depicted as a supervillain. It wasn't until later that he evolved into his more recognizable, morally flexible, anti-heroic persona. He's a character that filters his pain through comedy, also known as the Merc with the Mouth, willing to help out anybody, who can pay for his services, of course. Liefeld came up with the character visual design and name, whereas Nicieza came up with Deadpool's speech mannerisms. And similarities between DC's Deathstroke and Deadpool hardly went unnoticed, the creators going so far as to name Deadpool Wade Wilson as an inside joke to being related to Slade Wilson, Deathstroke. When Liefeld was asked about his inspiration for Deadpool's creation, he said, Wolverine and Spider-Man were the two properties that he was competing with at all times. He didn't have those, he didn't have access to them. He had to make his own Spider-Man and Wolverine. That's what Cable and Deadpool were meant to be, his own Spider-Man and Wolverine. Which is also another reason Liefeld wanted to, in some way, tie Deadpool to Wolverine by having him be a failed experiment from the same clandestine government genetic research facility project known as Weapon X. Now, it's one thing to animate a character on a comic book panel, but an entirely different thing to bring that character from comic book page to existing in the real world, in a film. Thankfully, the filmmakers wanted nothing more than to remain faithful to the character's origins, and step one of that process was to keep Deadpool's suit as realistic and functional as drawn in the books. The suit literally had to leap off the page. The costume designers spent months on refining the costume until it was finally ready. Reynolds was pleasantly surprised when he got to see the final product.
That was the most surreal moment where I saw the suit for the first time, and I'm not exaggerating or trying to be funny, I wept.
Step 2 of creating the costume was without a doubt the most important part, the mask. Reynolds spent an entire third of the film behind the mask, so it had to look great, and more importantly, it had to be able to convey emotion. One thing that has always bothered me about the Batman films was that we could always see the actors' eyes with black makeup around them to camouflage them within the cowl. Now, of course, I understand that this was done to be able to convey emotion through film, but in the comics, Batman's eyes are white eye slits. But because they're drawn, artists are able to render emotion through art. And the same thing was done with Spider-Man's eyes. Up until Captain America's Civil War, Spidey's eyes never moved, so I was pleasantly surprised when I first saw the trailer for Civil War, and finally saw Spidey's eyes animated to convey emotion. A few different techniques were applied to Deadpool's eyes. One was that they had different types of eye covers that could relate different types of emotions, and another one was done digitally by the artists at Weta Digital. This proved to be very successful in allowing Reynolds to deliver a performance despite being hampered by having his face covered throughout so much of the film. Deadpool is a groundbreaking, genre-bending property. It's an action, drama, horror, romance, comedy. It's an act dramedy. That's right, I just coined that. Right here, right now. You heard it here first. It's about a character that is aware of his fictional nature. He knows he's a comic book character in a comic book, or film in this case. And the writers use that to sensational effect. Not only does Deadpool break the fourth wall, he takes a wrecking ball to it.
Fourth wall break inside a fourth wall break. That's like 16 walls.
And because of the nature of the character, the marketing department was able to go above and beyond with what they were allowed to create. There was no ceiling. The production department created so many viral videos, billboards, commercials, and ads that fans actually didn't want the movie to come out so soon, because that would mean an end to the pre-release marketing campaign. But it was showtime, and despite the studio's fears of being handcuffed with an R rating, limiting their audience, the film was an absolute smash success at the box office. It set an unprecedented world record of being the highest-grossing R-rated comic book movie of all time. It also opened the door to many more possibilities, showing to other movie studios that there was an audience for these types of films, that if only a studio were inclined to take a risk, that they may be rewarded, such as was the case when Fox then released Logan, also with an R rating. With Deadpool 2 somewhere on the near horizon, I can't wait to see what Team Reynolds brings to the table this time, and knowing that Cable and Domino are part of the mix, well, I'm just giddy with anticipation. Thanks again for taking the time for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. Tip of the hat to our faithful Patreon subscribers. If you have any Deadpool or other related comments that you would like to share, by all means drop them in the comments section down below. I love you guys and thank you for your continued support. It is, as always, greatly appreciated. This episode was brought to you by Citrus. I'll see you guys next Friday.
It's very nice to see you.
Schwarzenegger.
My stuntman's about to fuck you up.
You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when